Hey, it's Zach, and I'm back with another episode of Elevate and Accelerate. And joining me today is a very special guest, Victoria Rader, or simply Vica. She was born in the Ukraine, and when the Soviet Union made it impossible for her to leave the country, that didn't hold her back. So she is dedicated to quantum personal development, which we will get into, I'm sure, because I'm curious about what that really means. And she's traveled now to over 40 different countries. She was in the top 1% of real estate agents, on the cover of Forbes Celebrity Magazine. The list goes on and on and on. But really, her deepest passion is really helping others to live and surrender to love. Life originating, vibrant emotion. And so we're going to get into all of that today. But Vica, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, Zach, what a warm, amazing welcome. I can tell you two phenomenal things about you. Usually people ask for self-intro. I hate it. So thank you for not having me do that. And two, if I happen to cross over, you are now the eulogy person. I'm sorry. Official. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Hey, I like to look, I know we spent a lot of time together. And so obviously that was very easy for me too. But look, there's so many questions that I have and so many things that we can talk about. But let's kind of start a little bit from the beginning. You've traveled over 40 different countries, which in and of itself is amazing. But you got your start in Ukraine at not so much of an amazing time. So kind of walk me through a little bit of that.
You know, it's fascinating you've said it. It is 49 now, and two are scheduled for this
40.
year. So there we go.
Okay.
2024 crossing 50. And I think, you know, for the younger audience that you might have, that lucked out of the totalitarianism of the Soviet Union, you know, what Zach is referring to is that you not only had to have an entry visa like some countries, which we with the luxury of American passport might not be aware of because it opens so many borders. But for most people in the world, if you want to go to a country, you have to have an entry visa. For us, it's like China, I think, still, you know. But for the Soviet Union, you had to have an exit visa. You had to have a permission to leave. And of course, nobody had a permission to leave if the good, loving Communist Party did not approve you to go to one of the social blocks because, you know, knowing the blessing in which you were brainwashed to experience, you might, you know, run away. And so, and I was born dreaming of traveling and very clear that that was not an act of possibility. To make it even more interesting, you had an internal passport. Your ID was also an internal passport, and your passport had a stamp. That stamp was called Propiska. The stamp stamped you into the city that you couldn't live outside of. A lot of people don't understand what really was happening. And so your choices of movement were limited. And then you add to the whole idea of complete absence of choices. You know, you go to school, you choose which classes to take. We were not given that. And yet I'm so grateful. You know, I'm so incredibly grateful for all of that because growing up in complete absence of external freedom, subconsciously, I understood the power of internal freedom. Because very quickly you realize whatever happens around you, nobody, if you won't let them, has access to what's happening inside of you. And so I think that was, in a way, the most divine placement for me to be doing what I'm doing now, which is, you know, making freedom contagious.
That's amazing. And what a great concept, right? I just did an episode not too long ago talking about how the most powerful people in the world are the storytellers, right? But a big part of what story can do for us is offer us freedom and that internal freedom like you're talking about. And so kind of tell me a little bit more about what that process is like and how somebody can get internal freedom or what that even really means.
You know, and just such a deep, beautiful question. And I do believe in stories. I'm going to give you two. One is the one that I probably shared hundreds of times and I get emotional every time. And one, my story, my childhood story. And I kind of will show how the two come together. And I think I'm going to start with my childhood story. So I'm 5 years old and I'm growing up and I'm being transported between two grandparent houses. You know, my parents are working full time, and in the summer, I'm in the village with my grandma and grandpa, good old outhouse, no plumbing, fresh well water, living the dream, you know, living the dream. Because when you have nothing, like when you have nothing to compare it with, you have a permission to live the dream. The first draining energy is comparison. It's just, so I'm literally a free kid because I haven't yet been poisoned into comparison, right? So, And that's summer. And then off summer, I am with my parental grandparents. And so this happens, I'm about 5 years of age, and I'm a very creative kid, and I'm trying to find a little hanger to hang a dress for my doll. And I look around and there's just no hangers available. So I pull out a metal pin out of my hair and I put it in the electrical fuse in the house. Like I plug it all the way in. And that's very exciting, sparkling inside. The plugs in the Soviet Union are twice the power there in the US. So it really is like a quick way out if the fuses don't blow. You know, in my case, the fuses blew, and I joke, and so did my grandpa. My grandpa ran in, he was all pale, he was screaming, he was saying, "You could have died. I'm 5, I have no idea." I'm like, what happened? And it was just a moment that got imprinted very deep into my psyche, and that I understood many, many, many years later of its significance. So what got imprinted into psyche was, if you're exploring, if you're joyful, if you're having fun, you get punished. And that living life fully leads to death. Now, of course, I didn't understand that as a 5-year-old, but I have seen it over the last 2 decades in thousands of clients where they're not living fully because they're waiting for a punishment if they allow themselves to live fully. And so you say, well, why is that? Like, the peril of that electrical circuit is so huge, because if you think of the power of electricity, the same amount of electrical power comes to all of the outlets in your house. And yet it is the resistance inside the device that determines the output. So if you're a teeny tiny 15-watt refrigerator bulb, you're barely bright. But if you're a Christmas outdoor light, or, bright 150, whatever it is, you're so bright. So I started thinking, isn't that interesting? Power divided by resistance equals the energy we output. And so we all have an infinite flow of what I call divine power to us. But resistance makes us survive. I didn't get killed because fuses got in the way. They placed resistance. And so that desire to survive keeps us away from surrendering to light and from fully living. Every single moment of every single day, there is an internal, beautiful strife and conversation between what I've come to name the little m of who I am and a big E of who I am. So when I say I am me, there is a fight between little m and big E, and the little m is my mortal matter, and it manifests materially. It's there. It needs to be loved. It needs to go pee and poop every dang day. No matter how spiritual I decide to be.
No matter what.
No matter what, she's got to eat, and that little body will always have fear. Living free of fear is only possible outside of the physical experience. And yet there's also this infinite part of me I call big E of me, and that is the eternal energy, the essence of expansion. And so everything then aligns with that 5-year-old kid being taught a lesson to surrender mortal to eternal, matter to energy, manifesting to expanding, and your material to your essential. And so how do you do that? And that's my second story that makes me sob. And that's when the awareness came in. You might have heard the story, but I say hear it from my prism because it comes from a different heart. And the story starts in 1400s. So it's 1480s or so, 1470s possibly. And there is an Italian sculptor whose name is Donatello. And Donatello is commissioned to sculpt a sculpture. And he's given a huge piece of marble. He studies it for months and he says it's not going to work. It has too many veins, cracks in the stone, bad marble, insufficient, imperfect, can't work with it. And he abandons that marble for over 50 years. 50 years later, another sculptor who we also know as an artist, Michelangelo, out of that very marble, carves what is negotiably the most famous sculpture of all time. He carves David. Now, I took my kids on a homeschool trip to Florence. I saw David. He stands in the open elements. He's not inside the museum. 500 years. And so his contemporaries ask him, how could you possibly carve this sculpture out of faulty marble? And it is. And His answer is the reason why I get my little struggling Em every morning out of bed when she doesn't want to go to work. He says, I saw the angel in the marble and I carved until I set him free. And that truth to me is so undeniable, that we all come here as infinite beings of light, as literal offspring of God, creator world designer. We have access to light, and then marble happens, layer upon layer, our genetic programming, our well-meaning parents, our less-meaning, relatives, and marble piles up. So much so that we forget who we are, we forget what we've come to be. And so the honor of what I get to do is chipping the marble daily, and more importantly, empowering others of how to do it on their own. So
That's such a beautiful story, and I love that. Not just your personal story, but then obviously the one that you shared with Michelangelo and David. My wife and I were in Florence too, and got to see that, and was just as shocking that it's outside all the time and looks incredible still. um, but yeah, so I mean, gosh, you touched on so many deep and important things throughout those two stories that you were just sharing, and I feel like it's this idea of chipping away and carving away, and then the internal resistance and all of these things that are, like marble that we've built up over time, weighing us down and keeping us from our full potential, right? And I know even in my line of work, which isn't the same as what you do, but very similar in some sense, in that we help people to understand their stories, is that people a lot of times don't even realize that they're carrying that marble in the first place. And that's always the most difficult part, is to help people to realize that they do have a story, and that they do have that angel inside of them that's just waiting to be let free, and that's that big E, right? That's what you were talking about, that big E. um, so I would love to hear from you as kind of somebody who's listening, and a lot of this can sound like things that they've never even heard before, right? And for some people it may be, they're at that point in their journey where it's perfect. But for the person who's on the starting line of something like this, how does one even begin to understand or to see where the marble's holding them back?
there are conscious awareness, and there is what we work with is subconscious sabotage. And I think most of us are conscious about limitations that are obvious to us. And for most of us, we know what we need to do. We may even attempt to do it, but then we fail and we fall into the cycle of self blame and assume it's just not for us. And I know that everybody has done it with some, path or the other. And that process, to your powerful point of you cannot free a person from a prison that they're unaware they're in. I mean, they'll think they're kidnapped if you break in and take them out of their cell where they got free food and free water. I mean, it's an analogy of actually Soviet Union falling apart. What do you mean I'm free? Who's going to feed me, right? And so, and
Yeah.
what is happening there is that I believe our greatest addiction as human beings is that to comfort. We're
Mm,
so addicted to comfort that even when it is uncomfortable, it is comfortable because that is what we're used to. And so even if something is quote unquote better, the fear of losing comfort temporarily paralyzes most people. And that fear, it's interesting. I don't know why it's coming through, but I'll share the word comfort, right, comes from Latin with and strength. Like the word fort, when you build a fort, you build something to protect something inside it. And in music, forte, piano, forte is strength. So comfort is inside your strength. So you're sitting in your little fortress and you're like, I am not leaving. Because if I stick my head out, my subconscious is like, danger, danger, you haven't been there, you're going to get punished, you're going to get hurt, you're going to get killed. So I'm going to be suffocated in my little fortress. It's interesting when you look at the word effort, it is outside of fort, it's outside of comfort. So to take a directional effort, you need to leave that. And so the first subconscious shift, as I work with mind on a subconscious level that we offer our clients, we say, here's good news. Where your strength ends, divine strength begins. Now, you identify what that means to you on your journey, but just when you're weak enough is when you become infinitely strong. Because you surrender your weakness completely. And until a day you've pushed yourself to a point of knowing there's nothing else I can do, is surrender possible. So if somebody who's sitting in their little fort and they're saying, well, this is all I know, this is all I want, I call it free agency, so be it. But for somebody who's sitting in that fort, and as I'm speaking, their pulse is racing, and that racing is both the fear and the desire, it is probably their time. It is their time to then say, what's my first step? And that's where we can talk about the power of questions. The power of questions. You know, I think the most powerful question came from Shakespeare, who said, to be or not to be, that is the question. And then there's scriptural, ask and you shall receive. The modern day consumption culture translated to ask for stuff and receive stuff. But I mean, it's so limiting. Ask and you shall receive has to do with, and it's going to give chills to somebody, the questions that you ask internally, your life answers externally. So if you're asking a question, what's wrong in my relationship? Oh, your partner is going to show you every single thing that's wrong in your relationship. And so if you're inside that little fort and you're not yet ready to come out, your first step is start paying attention to what questions you're asking. What's wrong with my boss? Why am I so broke? Those questions trigger, and I'll give you an example. They must trigger your subconscious. I'm going to ask Zach, what color are you thinking about?
Green.
And were you even thinking about the color before I asked you? Of course
Nope.
not. We can't help ourselves. We're wired to answer a question asked. So the first step for anybody is become aware of questions you ask. And I'm going to give you two phenomenal questions right away. If life is hard and everything's falling apart, the power question to ask is, how can I make this better? It is $1,000,000 question. You don't deny, you don't run around with false positivity and affirming I'm a money magnet when you broke, because your subconscious laughs in delight, going like, you're a lunatic. You feel like a lunatic, because affirming without feeling is misleading to your subconscious. Affirming with feeling is creating. We can talk about that. So first question, you know, how can I make this better? That's a power question. But what I see much more, Zach, is actually people starting to succeed and internally asking a question, when will it go wrong? When will the second shoe drop? And they do this yo-yo of up and down, of crashing and burning. It's that unspoken question, when will this go? It's just a matter of time when it'll go wrong. And so for somebody who is an uphill, the question becomes, how much better can it get? It's a daily question I ask myself. How much better can it get? And first, yes, you meet all of your ego need. How much better for me? How much better for my family? But I can tell you how much better it can get. It can keep getting better until there's no longer a hungry child on this planet. And it takes all of us.
Again, so much valuable wisdom in everything that you've just said. I- this idea of how we are trapped by our fears, right, and kind of living in this survival mode, is something that I mean I've experienced in my own life, and this idea of when is the other shoe going to drop, or I said it before, and I don't know if it was in a podcast or not, but finding it difficult to enjoy any level of success because I'm always waiting for when it's going to get taken away, right? Which you just said. And I know there's a lot of people who experience this similar thing. It's like, you're given a gift, but you don't enjoy it because you don't know if there's strings attached or if there's this thing or that thing. And so you get stuck in these patterns of, being trapped inside this fort. And that idea of comfort versus effort, being internal or external, and is just, there's so much there that we could unpack. But this idea of asking questions, I think, is such a true case, because curiosity is what opens the door even to relationship, right? And whether that's relationship with ourselves or with other people, is being able to ask good questions and the right questions that help move us forward. So it makes sense that you could do that for yourself too. Um, so here's another question. This idea of being able to control and maybe override in some ways our subconscious, and this level of pre-programming and wiring that we already have that can hold us back. Um, I noticed, from your website and in talking with you, you have this idea of what you call quantum personal development. Now, I understand what that means because I'm nerdy and I like to listen to, like, quantum physics podcasts. So, like, I know what it would mean over on that side. So kind of give me this idea of what quantum personality development is, and I'm guessing that's fitting into this idea of energy and limitless possibility. So yeah.
Yeah, so very much so, Zach. So, however you look at personal development and growth, it comes to one conclusion, and that's mind over matter. That's the summary of all personal development. Mind over matter. You change your mindset, which is very powerful. You align your action with it, and you push through and you grow. And it's very goal oriented, and I believe in all of that. By the way, it's none of it is quote unquote wrong. It's just that it is a part of a complete vision, right? And so in personal development, you set a goal and you strive for a goal. I remember one day waking up and saying, this is true and it's wonderful, but it's wonderful for little m. I mean, little m needs goals. I need to have lunch, I'm going to go get it. But then it keeps us in constant fear, because m's job is to be afraid. It's our mortal matter. So I said, what is beyond a goal? What is the driving force for all innovation? I'm going to chill as I say that. No innovator woke up and set a goal. What they saw was a problem in reality. And then instead of trying to fix it, instead of trying to complain about it, they've asked the right question. How do I fix it? All billions of dollars of healthy economy are answers to somebody saying, I have no clue, but I know this needs to be done. How do I fix it? And step by step by step, one day there were probably two people that couldn't talk to their dying mother. One get upset and told everybody around them, and the second one said, how do I create telegraph? How do I create iPhone? Right? The dissatisfaction of life caused two to have a response. One defaulting to complaining about status quo, and one asking a question. But the goal, the clear goal that we're talked about all this time in personal development, envision it. Oprah had no idea that she would be who she is. I don't know one prophet of either Torah, Quran, or Bible that had any idea of what they were going to become and be. Moses did not put it on his vision board that he's going to part the sea, whether you believe the story or not. And so I said,
He
okay,
didn't even want to be a leader.
I didn't want to be a leader. It was not on his freaking ego board, okay? So I said, okay, so personal development is important. It keeps M intact and driven and functional, because you need to have a goal to discipline your body and to work out. So it supports the flow of the energy. But then I asked why. And what came in is the quantum personal development aspect, that all of that is done to lay a foundation to complete surrender to divine guidance. And I'll tell you why it's so important and why I believe what our business is set up to do now, unapologetically, shamelessly, with burning passion, is timed perfectly. Because we live in a period when information is just growing. And with the amount of information, the disinformation is multiplying. Like that, you ask one question, speaking of questions, and you have 9 conflicting answers that are tearing you to shreds. And so what's happening on a spiritual energy level, the misinformation is leading to malformation of your energy. The stress, the demand, the overwhelm, the not knowing, you're losing the sight. So then what is the solution? The solution is quantum personal development, which is finding, seeking, and having the courage to follow the inner guidance above and beyond everything else. Surrendering all of your goals, surrendering all of your to-do lists to a very simple, very profound, very followable quantum alignment system. And you say, okay, what is it? Give it to you right now. You will fail in the beginning, great. Love every failure. And I'll give you the story. It's a story podcast. Great story with that. So first, the system based on the questions. And I live it. I've lived it for 20 years. I could probably do 9 volumes of miraculous stories that followed it. I really could. I will be very selectful with the ones to share. But in the beginning of each year, or at the time that you hear this, ponder, fast, pray, meditate, arrive at a theme for the year. And it's been popular. Some people said the theme or the word for the year. So the question, how you ask it, was very important. I would say you want to ask the higher guidance, and you're going to say, what is my theme for the year that grows my talents and helps all of humanity thrive? And all of a sudden, it's not an egocentric theme. It'll come through you. You write down the answer. Then the next step comes in, the next question. In the beginning of each month, you're going to ponder and ask, what is my theme for the month that supports my theme for the year? And then you become very focused for that month. But the rubber meets the road, and all the miracles and magic happens with the third question. It's very strategic. I'm a very spiritual, linear, logical being, right? The flow of energy happens when you give it the structure to flow. So the third question is, what is my one question to ask, or one action to take, or one decision to make that will help me thrive through my theme of the months? So you are channeling the guidance, and you ponder on what you've gotten, and you make that decision, you take that action, or you ask that next question, and you trust it, however silly it is. And I'm going to give you the silliest example of all time. So I've been blessed to be working with people outside of money concepts, meaning I have pro bono clients that are starving, and I have a few billionaire clients who are detached from their zeros. It's a really phenomenal life to be guiding people. So this particular story has to do with one of my billionaire clients who, like everybody that I empower, is encouraged, invited, and challenged to live this principle. He wakes up in the morning, he does his little thing, and he has a very clear knowing he needs to go buy an orange. It's stupid, right? I mean, it's like, your little lamb's going to be like, this is so stupid. That is, by the way, the text I'm getting. Your system of quantum alignment is just stupid. Who has time for this? That's stupid. I mean, okay, when you do your own shopping or you use Instacart, it's not a big deal. In his position, he has a team who shops for him. It's stressful because he needs to find where the closest grocery store is. I'm like cracking up laughing. So
What a world.
he's like, wow, orange. So he goes to the store. He actually buys one orange. He actually goes, grabs one orange. He's like, I'm standing like an idiot in a checkout line with one orange. And just as he's about to walk out, there's this very, very elderly woman with 2 big bags, like barely dragging him. And he said, I'm busy, but I'm like, I can't just let her go out. And he said, let me take these to the car for you. And she says, no, because I need to wait for my son to come. Because he says, no, I will hold your bags. So they come outside, and a lot of brilliant people are severely ADHD, right? And so he is no exception. He's standing there, it's like it's been 3 minutes, feels like 3 hours, And so she tells him, she says, look, my son is flying out from overseas. He has a business overseas. He told me not to go to the store to buy anything. He said that he's going to take me, but I wanted to fix his favorite things. So I Ubered here, and he's picking me up right from the airport. So he said, I'll wait with you, just want to make sure. And her son comes up. He loads the trunk, the car. She gets in the car. The son comes out, and he says, look, I'm so touched about what you've done. Here's my card. If there is anything, and I mean anything you ever need, it just writes down his, either writes down, it was on it, I don't remember, but his cell is there. My client is standing there, and he said, the most emotional moment of my life, because I recognize the name and the company name. And this is the guy who provides raw materials that we've been trying to get in touch with for 3 years. Right? A deal done over an orange. Now, you're not going to have an orange moment every day, because trust is developed by following steps in blind until the light is so bright that you cannot dismiss it. And so this system is the system of quantum personal development. It develops you in a guided way. One question at a time. And, to support on that journey with energy, obviously, there's a story of how it all arrived. You've mentioned I was a top 1% agent in real estate. And the reason I became that is in 2006, I took my kids to Greece. I was homeschooling them, and I decided that the best way for a 7 and 4-year-old, I didn't say I was sane ever, to study Greece was to go to Greek islands for 3 weeks. So I came home, and my incredible husband sat me down and he said, I don't know how it worked in Ukraine, swiping the plastic, you didn't have it. Here, this is called credit. We don't have the actual money. We're now in debt. And so it's the end of 2006. I literally go to all knowing Google and I ask a question. What is the fastest way for me to make money while being a homeschooling mom? That's what I put on Google. And at that time, real estate is booming. It's just booming. It's thriving. And so the Google shoots back real estate. Your own hours, market is strong. So I start a long process of getting a real estate license while homeschooling the kids. Finally get my license in my teeth by the end of 2007. I list my first home and the market starts crashing.
Yeah, you said 2007. That's what timing?
Timing. So by 2008, the market collapsed. I'm learning recession. And the beauty of it all is I don't know any better. I'm still the kid from the village with an outhouse. I have no idea that this is bad. I haven't formed any bad habits. So I know what I know professionals do. I get a coach. I put a coach on credit card. I hire a real estate coach with Buffini and Company immediately. Because I know if you're professionally work with a coach, right? That's why I have a coaching company. So I get a coach. And by 2009, I'm in the top 1% of agents in the country and Canada while working 20 hours a week, homeschooling my kids, and never working on Sunday. It's my sacred day. Sunday's off. God, family. It's my Sabbath. I remember my broker in the beginning when I came in with this whole idea of not working on Sunday. He goes, you're not going to make it. That's when all the open houses are. I'm like, well, then I will definitely make it because since all the open houses are on Saturday, I will have my open on Sunday. I'll have my open on Saturday. So everybody who goes in on Sunday and misses and competes will have come to mine on Saturday, right? It's what's a funny idea? Don't do what everybody does. And so that's the beginning of that success of being guided by a coach, of overcoming myself. I was a big piece to the story is that I was very shy as a kid. And so talking to strangers, I cried every night. For 2 years of real estate, I cried every night because I had to talk to strangers. I mean, just the whole other thing. So to make a long story short, by 2013, my career is thriving. I have 28 million pending, in sales, just a really great career. And it is the hardest year I've ever experienced. Every year, with frequency of every month, with frequency about one person a month, I'm losing people to unexpected death. It starts with my aunt, and then my uncle, unrelated, then my cousin drowns, who's my age. It was surreal. It was a surreal experience. And it's becoming kind of darker and darker. And for quite a while, the darkness was forming because while this business is up and down and is succeeding, my relationship with my husband is not where I want to be. My health, the token of this visible success and grinding, the token of grinding is taking much higher price. I remember getting to that point of when I'm like, this is it. I can't handle it anymore. Like, I can't. And I remember going to bed and praying and saying, either take me or take it from me because I just can't. I have a diagnosis pending over my head. I have these 2 kids I'm homeschooling, and I'm woken up in the middle of the night with a very clear understanding that I've been trying to fight the darkness. And the Spirit says, all you need to do is turn on the light. You walk into the dark room, you flip the light switch, turn on the light. And I literally sit up in my bed and I say, how? What do I do to turn on the light? And it was create your company, understand how subconscious works, because that's where the light is turned on. And that first story that I told you, all the stories line up to where I'm sitting there thinking, I've been prepared for this since my first day, through all the hardships, through all the challenges, through all the triumphs. So I leave my booming real estate career, my sweet husband, saint or man universe has not known. I come up to him and I say, honey, I know you're retiring and we have no income. I'm walking away from real estate. I'm starting a new business. He's like, okay. And so I started my company, You to Shine. And to do that, I understand that the importance of your subconscious is so much more powerful than the importance of your conscious habits. Because I'm starting analyzing my success in real estate, there were people that outworked me, there were people that were smarter than me, there were people that are more diligent, more brilliant, more capable, greater at net. There were people that should have outshined me that did not. And so I started digging deep what was the reason. And what it came down to was deep subconscious programming. So I went and I got my PhD in metaphysical studies, learning how the laws of the universe coincide to subconscious programming. I've mastered every energy modality. Naturally, I've always been a healer. Now I had awareness of that. Channeled my psychic gifts that used to freak me out to serve humanity. And so the company we created identifies the deep subconscious paradigms and then equips people with shifting them so that they can reclaim their life, chipping away that marble. That's kind of the full journey. And that whole process is the process of quantum personal development, to give you a very long winded answer.
And I think one of the distinctions too, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's important to point out here too for people that your subconscious is the majority of how you operate in many cases, right? Like we think our conscious mind is what's in control, but in my own work and the things that I've seen and people that I've talked to, the reality is like it's our subconscious mind is really what's in control. Joe Dispenza talks a lot about being able to rewire that. There's a lot of people who talk about it, but I've never heard it talked about in the way that you're talking about, which is exciting and fun. And, why you're, working with the people you work with and doing what you do, right? It's your gift and your talent. And the answer to that question that you've been asking for some time now. But I do think it is important to say too, like it's this idea of the subconscious that we, it's not woo woo, right? It's not this some sort of crazy outside thing. I mean, there's science behind it. There's all sorts of things behind this. But if you feel like you are hitting a wall, if you feel like it's, you've probably heard self-sabotage before. You hear it's like all of these different things. Like that's the core of what you're getting into here, is that it's kind of like a bad dream, right? Is how I think about it. It's like you feel like you're running from something, but you have no idea what it is, and you can't quite run fast enough. And it's like the world at large and a lot of people who are unaware of that are trying to run towards that comfort. What are the things that are going to provide comfort? What are those things that are going to keep me from having to run away from this thing that I don't even know what it is that I'm running from, right? I just want to feel safe. And that's that little M that you've been talking about, which is so cool, right? But on the other side of that then is the ability to be able to understand how this big E also needs the little M, right?
Yeah.
Um, is You talked about the structure and everything else too, but I'd be interested in hearing from you, I guess, and I could kind of ramble on, but who wants to hear what I have to say when I've got you on
I do.
here about it?
Yeah,
So,
I'm very
um, so but like this idea of like running from the monsters in our dreams, right? It's like we're chasing after this comfort. And actually I don't remember who, and I wish I could remember who it was. There was a guy who wrote a book about his experience on mushrooms and taking different types of psychedelics. um, Something with mind. I don't know. I'll have to put it in the description so people can check it out. But anyway, one of the things he talks about too, and one of the guides and people that he's worked with when he was doing some of these, psychedelic trips, was that if something bad starts to happen when your mind is in that space, you can't try to run away from it. If you try to run away from it, you'll have what they call a bad trip, right? You'll just be constantly running then, and it'll get worse and worse because your mind is going to exacerbate that fight or flight feeling that you're going through. Instead, what you do is you turn and you face it and you ask it a question, which is what made me think about it because of everything that you talked about. But it's like you stop and face whatever it is, and you either ask yourself or whatever it is, why are you here and what are you trying to teach me? And it's like in when you do that, it completely shifts the trajectory of what that's going on. And the same thing is true in our conscious lives. Like, it's like, as we're living our life, if we stop to ask that question and realize in the areas where we're running from, are we running from, you know, talking to that person? Are we running from quitting our job? Are we running from, you know, whatever it is? Stop and turn and ask even ourselves, like, why am I doing that? It could be life changing.
Well, absolutely. And then the very follow-up question to that would be, what is a better way to handle it? Like, if this life
Mm,
is all about improving, the question, what is the lesson I'm learning? And if there was a better lesson, what would it be? What is the immediate
mm,
application of this lesson without need to run? Question after
mm,
question after question, mastery of those questions. And then just, speaking of that, so you've mentioned the word dream so many times that I have to. So we have a ton of products, obviously, right? A ton of products. But I got to tell you, I think it's about now 6 months ago, I literally was woken up in the middle of the night with this idea to create a journal that is called Dreamy. We have books, and one of the journals is called Dreamy. And the purpose of that journal is to allow to surrender your dreaming state to become the unfolding of divine dream through you in your reality. It's like a 90-day experiment. And I know it hasn't been yet full 90 days because I have a whole group of people that are going through it and I'm getting bombarded by their phenomenal
mm.
insights. I'll give you one. I'll give you a full spoiler. Inside, vulnerable, incredible thing. Um, Speaking of brand, when you know who you are and you walk who you are, you don't need to look for people. Your light becomes so radiant, they come to you. And so I was sharing with you before we started recording that I'm at a point where I'm so fierce about the help I have to offer. I'm just fierce about it that all of a sudden my very close friends and clients came up and I said, "Hey, you need a CEO, you need the team. We're your team. Don't worry about paying. We're going to do profit share and we'll tell you how we're going to do it." And so I'm like in this twilight of miracle right now. And so one of those exchanges happened yesterday where this gentleman who we met at a party, can't announce the name yet because it's not official, and he and my CEO, Marla, become accountability partners with this Dream Me journal that just came out. And so they're going through the Dream Me journal and they're doing these exercises. They're having a blast. I'm unaware that any of this is happening until yesterday. We're meeting and he is like, "I know I belong with you guys and this is what I can do." And I'm like, "Well, we need a CMO, sleep on that. So he wakes up, he's like, "Yep, I'm your CMO." So haven't even talked to the leadership team on onboarding him. All of this happening real time as we're recording this, Zach. And Marla says, I need you to know something cool. I need you to know the story beyond story. He he was woken up based on the prompts in the Dream Me journal. He was woken up and told to record a clip about quantum leap in the mind inspired by your teachings. As she says this, I have chills through my whole body because we're in the process of finalizing our incredible offer at mygiftoffer.com. That offer is a quantum leap book that will have 50 blocking beliefs, 12-minute video on how to shift them, and 50 beliefs to expand and step into to thrive. Incredible offering. The name of the book is Quantum Leap, From Breaking Apart to Breaking Through. He
Mm,
was guided by the book to create a video. This week, we're uploading videos to that site,
mm.
mygiftoffer.com. So when I got that book in the middle of the night, the timing had to have been precise for all of this to happen. So one of those in the book, before my gift offer was even active, I'm like, if you go to this, you're gonna tap out the dreams that cause. We stop dreaming. This is very key to what you were sharing. We stop dreaming because we're afraid of our nightmares. Because the same mind that God gave us to dream with unprocessed trauma, will cycle through the nightmares. And so by releasing the programs that cause nightmare, by addressing the unprocessed trauma, by forgiving, by healing, we're freeing our subconscious to dream and to channel God-sized dreams.
Well, look, I feel like I could talk with you for hours, but obviously we want to, keep this a little bit shorter for our listeners who may be in the car or doing other things as well. So Look, it's been a great experience. I'm sure we'll have another opportunity to speak. Um, I would love to hear from you two more things. One, you had already kind of touched about the branding stuff, and that's a lot of what we talk about, and so I don't feel the need to jump into that, but I would love to hear, what is your key piece of advice? What is the one thing that you would kind of leave everybody with after everything we talked about? And I think they've gotten a lot already, but what would be that one thing that they could walk away with? And then the second thing is, how would somebody be able to contact you? Now, I know we've got the offer and everything, but if they want to reach out to you, if they want to find out more, what would that look like?
Yeah, so probably the most important piece of an advice comes from, I will give it practical framing, but it comes from realization that when we lose touch with who we are, we start experiencing all the other losses. And I think it's very important. I'm a person who, quote unquote, has been betrayed a lot in my life. And because it became a pattern, and I know that patterns are created by subconscious, I had to sit down and do self healing and say, okay, girl, how is it serving you, right? And what I found is, and it might sound triggering, but there's power in it, is that betrayal is only possible when we first betray the inner guidance we're born with. And what I mean is, at some point, if I were to be honest with myself, every relationship that led to betrayal, early on, somewhere along the path, I had an inkling to shift it. Or I had an inkling not to sign the document, but because my reasonable mind saw the logic of it, I squashed that inkling. And so the greatest advice I can give is learn to still all the voices around you, so much so that that little tiny voice inside of you gets heard. And when you hear it, follow it. Follow it despite anybody else's opinion. And I promise you, as you do, and little miracles start unfolding, the momentum will pick up and then it'll carry you, the many times that you'll fall down, because you will. So find it, lean into it, follow it. There's no greater key than that. So for finding me, yes, if you wanted the mygifoffer.com, great. Our website is you to shine, yu2shine.com. You can go to contact page. I personally respond to all the contact, appropriate and business based. I've had a lot of inappropriate contact. You will be ignored. And then on Instagram, it's at Vica, Vica _ Rader, Rader. You can also find me there.
Awesome. Well, Vika, thank you so much for sharing your stories, for sharing your wisdom, and that important piece of advice. I know I've got a lot to think about, and even just that little piece that you just said of how the noticeable patterns in our life are often created by our subconscious. And that's a good place to start. So thank you for that. And thanks for joining me today.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And thank all of you. As always, if you liked this, please like, subscribe, share, do all that fun stuff that you can do. I appreciate you. We appreciate your support. And until next time, keep elevating and accelerating.